Imagine descending to the depth of the ocean. It's getting darker and darker. And suddenly, you see something shocking. The remains of a mysterious creature. You've never seen anything like that before. It actually happened in 2017. An oil and gas industry worker filmed a video and sent it to researcher Deborah Hatswell. Ultimately, the video ended up on the internet. It was recorded at a depth of about 2,700 feet during an investigation conducted by a remote-operated vehicle. At one point during the examination, the submarine came across the remains measuring almost 98 feet in length. The operator of the submarine was startled by the unexpected discovery. He tried to use the submarine's remote-controlled claws to get a hold of a piece of the skeleton. But once the claws touched the remains, they immediately crumbled into dust. Some people are sure that the skeleton must have belonged to a whale, but Hatswell has her own idea. She claims that since the video was taken by a professional, he should know what whale bones look like. Those who work underwater occasionally come across such remains. She also adds that a whale's spine has 3 blades spaced 120 degrees apart, but the discovered creature had only 2. Plus, the dimensions of the remains don't fit any sea life in that region. So, is it a representative of some previously unknown giant marine species or just a regular whale? It remains unclear. According to scientists, there are several reasons why marine animals can grow incredibly massive. First of all, they live in the ocean, which means their playground is big enough. They aren't limited by any borders and thus can grow and develop. Besides, you might remember how weightless you feel when floating in the water. Marine giants experience the same. Unfortunately, unlike you, they can't rely on its skeleton. I mean, their bodies wouldn't be strong enough to support such a huge body on dry land. But in the ocean, the buoyancy of the water helps them stay afloat. That's why they can grow as massive as they want. The largest living animal on Earth is the blue whale. The average grown-up animal reaches up to 98 feet in length and weighs like 33 elephants. The blue whale's heart can be compared to a small golf cart, and the volume of this magnificent creature is almost the same as the volume of 7 fuel trucks. And if you think that at birth, blue whales are just as huge, you're absolutely right. When a baby whale gets born, it's already bigger than a hippo. At a length of almost 25 feet, this kid sometimes weighs more than an elephant, about 3 tons. A little whale drinks 50 gallons of mom's milk every day. As a result, it gains about 200 pounds of weight every day. But this is nothing in comparison to how much adult blue whales eat. They devour 4 tons of food a day. That's approximately 40 million krill. These tiny shrimp-like creatures are the main food source for blue whales. Now, how about we talk about other giant and unusual animals? These days, the capybara is considered to be the largest rodent in the world. It can grow up to 130 pounds. But around 3 million years ago, there was another rodent that was way larger than the capybara. It weighed a whopping 2,600 pounds. Let's call this creature J. monesi, since its full name is too tricky to pronounce. They lived in the forest areas of modern-day Uruguay. These animals had big front teeth. Scientists think they could use them in the same way elephants use their tusks, for getting food and defending themselves from predators. As for the animal's molars, they were small and too weak to chew tough food. At the same time, the J. monesi had a strong bite, 3 times more powerful than that of a tiger. More than 30 million years ago, a hornless rhino was roaming Earth. This giant weighed more than 4 grown-up modern elephants, about 30 tons. Even though it reached a height of 18 feet, the animal had a small skull. But its long limbs allowed it to eat branches and leaves off pretty tall trees. Even without the horns modern-day rhinos can boast, their prehistoric relatives had something unusual. it was teeth. Out of two pairs of incisors, the lower one pointed forward and the upper one leaned downward. Experts think this could help the creature hold branches in its mouth more steadily while eating them. This prehistoric rhino is still the largest known land mammal to ever exist. The Argentinosaurus is considered to be one of the largest dinosaurs to have ever roamed the surface of the planet. This creature was discovered in 1987 in Argentina, hence the name. The length of this colossal herbivore that lived around 90 to 100 million years ago could be as long as 3 school buses. These dinos were pretty slow. Their top speed was around 5 miles per hour, which is the speed of a very slow taxiing Boeing 747. But no wonder they didn't rush. Imagine carrying such a huge weight every day. Scientists haven't figured out yet how these enormous animals held their necks vertically or horizontally. The problem is that in a vertical position, the Argentinosaurus's heart would have experienced enormous pressure. After all, it would have had to pump an impressive amount of blood 40 feet into the air and repeat it 60 times every minute. The green anaconda is one of the largest snakes on the planet, considering its length to weight ratio. The average specimen might not be the world's longest, but the snake's enormous girth makes it twice as heavy as other huge reptiles. This creature is rather clumsy on land, but sleek and fast in the water. It can also lay in wait for hours while almost totally submerged. The saltwater crocodile can grow up to 23 feet in length. It's the most massive modern reptile. The largest males can weigh as much as a small hippo. Females are usually twice smaller. These super predators have the most powerful bite among reptiles. They hunt by hiding near rivers and waiting for animals to come to drink water. They also don't hesitate to strike people. The largest living organism on dry land might be a particular honey fungus which grows in the Blue Mountains in Oregon. It spreads over an area equal to 1,700 soccer fields, and although it may sound incredible, the fungus can be from 2,400 to 8,650 years old. The only part of this huge thing you can accidentally spot is small brownish mushrooms on the ground. But even if you take a usual mushroom, what you see is only 10% of the whole deal. The biggest part is hidden from your eyes underground. But while ordinary mushrooms feed on plants and fallen leaves, the honey fungus is much more dangerous. It's very harmful to the trees growing nearby. The fungus attaches itself to tree roots and feeds off of them. Unfortunately, this process damages trees, slowly and irreversibly. And if you have doubts about whether this fungus colony can be considered an individual organism, don't worry, it passes the test. It perfectly fits the definition because the fungus consists of genetically identical cells which communicate, coordinate themselves, and share a common purpose. According to rough estimates, the weight of the Oregonian humongous fungus may reach 441 tons. That's much heavier than the blue whale. But even if some animal isn't the largest in the world, it doesn't mean it can't surprise you. For example, a 1-inch long subtropical shrimp disorients its prey with a sonic boom. As loud as a sonic boom once produced by the supersonic plane Concorde. This sound stuns the prey, and the shrimp can catch it without too much effort. Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Paracetus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time, and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was. But they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Paracetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life.
The Meg, aka Megalodon, roamed the oceans long after dinosaurs were wiped out by the Great Meteorite. It was one of the largest and most dangerous hunters that have ever lived on Earth, as well as the biggest shark. But then, about 3.6 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from our planet, leaving only huge teeth for modern archaeologists to keep finding. There are a few theories about why it could have happened, but scientists might have found the true reason. The Megalodon, which means big tooth, was the largest shark ever to exist. It reportedly lived around 20 to 3.6 million years ago and was truly enormous. Its bite was more powerful than that of a T-Rex, and likely any other powerful predator that has ever roamed this planet. It's probably not surprising since this marine creature had extremely strong jaws that could span from 9 to 10 feet wide. That's enough to swallow 2 grown-up people side by side. The jaws were also lined with 276 teeth, and they reached 7 inches in length. That's as long as a small hedgehog. Once these teeth got worn down, the shark got rid of them and grew new ones. Such large sedated teeth helped the Meg to eat meat easily. The shark itself could grow up to 59 feet long. That's twice the length of a London double-decker bus. The animal was also pretty heavy. While a fully grown T-Rex weighed about 8 tons, the weight of a large Megalodon could be more than 30 tons. With no competitors, the enormous shark was the real king of the oceans. It hunted other sharks, large fish, and even whales. Then why did such a magnificent creature disappear from the face of the Earth? The previous theories mentioned the great white shark. The Megalodon is usually described as some gigantic version of this marine animal. And this is a common mistake made because most people think these creatures were related. But in reality, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. Its snout was snout, its lower jaw was rather flat, and long and massive pectoral fins supported the animal's weight. But what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the Megalodon. Now, with great size comes great clumsiness. And although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as smaller and quicker great white sharks. Great whites could have rivaled a Megalodon for food, and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So according to this theory, the only food left for the Megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Grown-up Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Could smaller sharks have used this to their advantage? Maybe while megasharks were still little, they became a meal for great whites, as well as bull and tiger sharks. Even at those times, a great white shark could reach the length of 20 feet, while a Megalodon kid was definitely smaller. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young Megalodons and smaller grown-up sharks, Meg kids wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The reason is the same. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling each other and the Meg for convenient food. The more great whites and other sharks appeared in the oceans, the less food remained for young monster sharks. Eventually, they probably starved. But it's just one of the theories that try to explain why the Meg went extinct, and here's another one. A new study has shown that the Meg was most likely a warm-blooded predator able to regulate its body temperature, and that might have been the reason why this species disappeared with time. Scientists analyzed isotopes of the tooth enamel of the Megalodon and concluded that the animal could easily maintain a body temperature that was around 13 degrees F warmer than the temperature of the surrounding water. Such a temperature difference is much greater than what other sharks living at the same time as the Meg had, and it's large enough for the ancient predator to be classified as warm-blooded. These days, most fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature is the same as the surrounding water, but some sharks, like mackerel sharks, keep the temperature of all parts of their bodies a bit warmer than the surrounding water. But it doesn't make them completely warm-blooded because they simply store heat generated by their muscles. And in mammals, body temperature is regulated by a special region of the brain called the hypothalamus. Anyway, the Meg's warmer body allowed the animal to move faster, deal with cold water better, and spread out all over the world. But eventually, it might have led to a disaster. The Megalodon lived during the Pliocene epoch, pronunciation. It began approximately 5.3 million years ago and finished 2.5 million years ago. During that period, global cooling occurred. It also caused the changes in sea level, which the Megalodon probably didn't survive. The main problem for the predator was to maintain an energy level allowing its body temperature to remain elevated. But to do it, the animal had to eat a lot, and I mean it. But it was a challenging task in a time of changing marine ecosystems and while competing with newcomers, such as the great white shark. If this theory is true, then the amount of energy the Meg had to use to remain warm could have contributed to its extinction. This new information is very important to us. It shows that many marine predators in modern oceans might be experiencing the effects of ongoing climate change too. By the way, have you heard that there have been several cases when people were sure they had seen the Meg? Or at least some similar extremely large monsters. And these sightings happened relatively recently. For example, in July 1916, the New Jersey coast of the US was terrified by a series of shark attacks. They happened during an oppressive heat wave when hundreds of beachgoers tried to find shelter from the heat near the water. People described the culprit that had caused all that havoc as a giant shark, much bigger than any regular one. Since then, scientists have been debating which shark species was involved in those accidents. The most popular guesses have been the bull shark and the great white. A picture of a huge shark roaming the Pacific Ocean not far from Guadalupe Island appeared in 1999. The creature was nicknamed Deep Blue. It could be distinguished from others by a wavy pattern separating its gray back and white belly. But even though some people claimed it could be the infamous Megalodon, experts came to the conclusion it was a female white shark, the largest ever seen. The average length of a male white shark is 11 to 13 feet. Females are bigger, up to 15 or 16 feet, but Deep Blue reached more than 20 feet in length. No wonder people were confused. For the last time, Deep blue was spotted in 2013 near the western coast of Mexico's Baja California. But look, there's another jumbo shark, and you can meet it in any part of the world. The largest specimens can reach 40 feet long and weigh about 5 or even 6 tons. Could it be, if not the Megalodon itself, but one of its relatives? Again, a wrong guess. That's the basking shark. This animal prefers subpolar seas, with temperatures not higher than 58 degrees F, even though some of these animals do migrate to warmer places. Like whale sharks, basking sharks are harmless and don't attack snorkelers or divers. These creatures have loads of small teeth, but they don't use them when feeding. Instead, they swim with their huge mouths open and swallow plankton. A grown-up basking shark can filter nearly 2,000 tons of water per hour.
It was one of the biggest creatures ever to roam the Earth. It was longer than your average school bus and could easily weigh more than 10 elephants combined. But where did it live? How did it end up having this size? And most importantly, why is it extinct nowadays? Let's find out. The Megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the Megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably that the gigantic creature adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones liked to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. How do we know the Megalodon was so widely spread? We can only presume, based on the fact that they discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The discussion of how the Megalodon got this size is still open in the scientific community. They recently found out that not all the specimens from this fascinating species reach the same huge size. This has to do with a little something called the Bergmann's Rule, which says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The megalodons that reach cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. On the contrary, those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. But what did this enormous fish look like? Most modern depictions show the megalodon resembling an enormous great white shark. But well, it seems it may not necessarily be correct. The megalodon likely had a much shorter nose and a flatter jaw that looked almost squashed when compared with a great white shark. It also seems to have something in common with the modern blue shark: extra long pectoral fins. They needed these to support their weight and size while navigating the planet's waters. Lastly, the lady megalodons, seem to have been about twice as large as the gentlemen. As for their offspring, even a small megalodon was enormous, at least 6.5 feet from nose to tail. How do we know that? Because specialists have stumbled upon megalodon nursery habitats in Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida. Even the piles of used diapers were enormous. Nah, not really. Surely the scariest aspect of the megalodon's looks was its mouth. I mean, think about it. Megalodon had whales for dinner, so it obviously needed to open its mouth wide enough. Scientists have estimated that its jaw would span a mind-boggling size, 9 by 11 feet wide. Just to paint you a better picture, that means it could have easily gulped down 2 adult people side by side. Wait, which 2 adults? Those impressive jaws also feature 276 teeth. Based on modern reconstructions of the force of its bite, it looks like it may have been one of the most, if not the most, powerful animals of prey ever to exist. For comparison, humans can have a bite force of around 1,300 newtons. Today, great white sharks have been estimated to be able to bite down with a force of over 18,000 newtons. The megalodon tops all the records, with an estimated power of bite up to 10 times greater than that. It could basically crush a car with very little effort. Its teeth were also pretty amazing. Similar to sharks, the megalodon was fast in replacing its broken or worn teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, It basically acted like a conveyor belt, growing back damaged or missing teeth within about 48 hours. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. It was nice of them to do that, though, since it's probably one of the reasons why megalodon teeth are so common in fossil records, and we're able to study them properly. To maintain its impressive physique, the megalodon had to eat somewhere around 2,500 pounds of food per day. Can't wrap your head around that? Well, it was the equivalent of 1¼ cows per day to survive. It's like if you had to eat 3,300 cans of tuna every day. I've used the word megalodon a lot, but have I mentioned where it comes from? When translated from Greek, it means giant tooth. Ah, those clever Greeks. However, this giant shark's full scientific name is a bit more complicated: Carcharocles megalodon. But are these gigantic predators actually extinct? We tend to believe so, but let's be honest for a second. We've come to know more about the surface of Mars than the depths of our oceans. Like, we've only explored 15% of our oceans altogether. Who knows what may be lying out there in the deep? Maybe some ancient predators? The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. The Challenger Deep, its deepest part, is so deep that you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in there and it would still be over a mile above the surface. That's deep. If a megalodon or two ever needed a place to crash, that would be a discreet enough location. However, the Mariana Trench is not a particularly comfy place to be in. Because it's cold and steeped in total darkness and all. The temperatures here are around 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. And to top it all off, the pressure is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So it's safe to assume that if any megalodon is hiding in here, its teeth and bones might not be looking so good. Because of the intense pressure here in the Mariana Trench, proteins and calcium start to dissolve and disintegrate. That's why, for example, the Haddell snailfish, the deepest dwelling fish we've discovered, has evolved to feature flexible cartilage instead of bones. To survive here, the megalodon would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have to either become luminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. While it may sound like an intriguing and good idea for a movie script, most scientists don't think it's possible. Why? Well, most of them say it's because of the megalodon's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Specialists believe that if these animals were actually still roaming our waters, there's no way we wouldn't know about it. They would need to come up for dinner every now and then, right? Their food is also the most likely cause of why the megalodon is not alive anymore. While some specialists believe the megalodon became extinct because of a drop in the ocean water temperature, most scientists suggested that the shifting food chain dynamics may have been more to blame. Why? Because at some point, there was less and less of its primary food source, baleen whales, and at the same time, the numbers of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks like the great white shark and whales, increased. The megalodon did live on this planet a lot more than we did, and way back when we didn't even exist yet. They were here for nearly 70 times longer than we, modern humans, have, inhabiting the oceans for around 20 million years. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. The megalodon managed to survive for so long mostly because of its unbeatable size. I mean, they can make a meal out of almost everything in the sea at the time. We may think about both of them as prehistoric creatures, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never coexisted on Earth. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. That's because the oldest megalodon fossils we have yet discovered are from the Miocene epoch, which began 23 million years ago. So long, Meg! Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently in danger. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburrs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild.
In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident, But in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Ötzi. He was named after the nearby Ötztal Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Ötzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Ötzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Ötzi, but other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had diplomatic mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers. For years, we've thought the Megalodon was just a big shark, which is scary enough. After all, it could have eaten a creature the size of a whale in just 5 bites. Estimates indicate that the largest shark that ever lived had been around 59 feet long, which is a reasonable size and explains a lot. But the scientific community was wrong. Very wrong. Now, scientists have proven that megalodons could grow up to 80 feet long, which is the same as a 6-story building. The creature would have certainly been dozens of times bigger than you if you had seen it underwater. These giants ruled the ancient oceans between about 20 million and 3 million years ago. And even though it was a long time ago, they've left a lasting impression, becoming the protagonists of many movies. And scientists continue to search for answers about their life. Thanks to this, we still occasionally find their fossils. But the thing is, no one has ever found a complete skeleton. All we have are scattered vertebrae, a few scales, and, of course, those massive, razor-sharp teeth. The most complete piece we know of is a 36-foot section of a megalodon's spine. It was once part of the trunk of the animal's body. So, to assess just how big the megalodon was, experts compared its fossils to more than 150 species of sharks, both those that are alive and those that have gone extinct, to get the most realistic result possible. if the Megalodon had had the proportions of a regular shark, it would have had a 6-foot head and a 12-foot tail. It would have also stretched 54 feet from nose to fin. But these measurements are way off the mark. The largest Megalodon vertebra ever found is 9 inches in diameter, which makes it 3 inches larger than the largest vertebra of a typical shark. And if we follow these proportions, that Megalodon was a whopping 80 feet long. To better understand how giant this is, just think of 2 school buses lined up end to end. For a long time, it was very common to think that the Megalodon was just a giant great white shark. And it makes sense, right? I mean, both would have had large, terrifying, serrated teeth. But that was another completely wrong idea. Now, we know that Megalodons were actually much more slender and aerodynamic than the modern great white shark. Their body shape was built to cut through the water with much less resistance, minimizing the effects of gravity in the sea, letting them glide effortlessly through the ocean. Now, if Megalodon wasn't just another great white shark, what other animal of the same species was it most similar to? Surprise! In fact, it had more in common with the modern lemon shark. This species has robust and powerful bodies, 2 large dorsal fins, and blunt snouts, which makes them really fast and agile hunters, like prehistoric predators. In other words, while thinking about the Megalodon, you can imagine a giant, turbocharged lemon shark. This is the most modern comparison of the Megalodon with another animal, unless scientists find a complete skeleton of the ancient shark. But it's not common to find complete shark skeletons. They're rare because they're actually made not of bone but of soft, coated cartilage, like the stuff in human noses and ears. Their teeth are the boniest part of their bodies, and it's the reason why we've found so many of them. Yet, a complete skeleton is like scattered puzzle pieces to us. There's no solid bone to hold these pieces together, so the whole thing is very vulnerable to falling apart. Still, it's actually possible for an entire shark skeleton to survive. In these cases, very specific natural phenomena have to come into play. The skeleton needs to get buried super fast in mud or sediment, free of any kind of scavengers and away from ocean currents. Otherwise, it simply disintegrates before it can fossilize. Interestingly, although the sea is the home of these animals, it is possible to find their skeletons on land too. Millions of years ago, a big portion of today's dry land was submerged, teeming with marine life. Then, in certain places, sedimentary minerals and specific biological conditions of the seabed allowed the fossilization of sharks in marine rocks. Today, those are desert rocks that ensure the preservation of shark fossils. But in any case, searching for a shark tooth in a desert is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But finding an entire fossilized skeleton embedded in a rock is like hitting the jackpot. Another unexpected discovery is that these prehistoric sharks were not born small and cute like regular baby sharks. A newborn Megalodon could reach almost 13 feet in length. That's more than twice the height of the average human. Imagine a shark the size of a boat from the moment it's born. Now, although we don't have all the information about the giant of the seas, it's a fact that it's one of the most famous animals in pop culture worldwide. Not only has it inspired several movies, but some people also insist that the Megalodon is still alive. Scientists say it's not. The Megalodon didn't survive the test of time, and it would be impossible for such a giant creature to dwell in the seas without us noticing it. First, it was a super predator. It hunted whales, dolphins, and other large marine animals. If the Meg was still around, its presence would completely change the balance in the oceans. It would have huge impacts on marine ecosystems, regulating populations and influencing the size and behavior of the ancient shark's prey. A good example is whales. They wouldn't have grown so big if the Meg still hunted in the oceans. This only happened because there was no super predator in the way. If the giant shark was still in our oceans, species like the blue whale would be tiny, as they would need to develop and adapt to be able to escape constant attacks. The lives of the workers of the sea would also be completely different. Fishers would have to avoid certain areas, ships would change routes, and even maritime tourism would be risky. Going for a swim and coming across a shark over 65 feet long? Not worth the risk. Plus, if the Megalodon was still out there, we would have some proof. Commercial fishing catches millions of sharks every year, and a monster of this size would not go unnoticed. Not to mention that with all of today's technology such as drones, satellites, and submarines at our disposal, someone would have already recorded an encounter with this living legend. By the way, most sharks, like most fish, are cold-blooded, but the reality for Megalodon was different. This giant was able to keep its body warmer than the surrounding ocean. This gave it an advantage over other sea creatures, allowing it to remain fast and active even in colder waters. It was a survival advantage that other animals of its kind did not acquire during their evolution. One of the most famous theories is that the Meg lives in the Mariana Trench, but scientists are sure that it doesn't make any sense. This region is poor in food and has many tiny creatures, which would not be nearly enough to sustain a large predator. In addition, there's a lot of research studying countless sharks that live in the ocean depths, and none of them come close to the size of the Megalodon. So, does the Megalodon still exist? Definitely not, but that doesn't mean it isn't any less mysterious and fascinating.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leadsichthus were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leadsichthus was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are 2 species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their three-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them. Now imagine a creature with a body that is reminiscent of a cuttlefish, with eyes sticking out from stalks like a funky headband, fins on its tail, and a long skinny nose ending in a mouth full of teeth. Or maybe this thing could be a claw. Yep, the Tully monster is on the move. It's definitely one of those freaky creatures you wouldn't like to face while scuba diving somewhere. Luckily, it went extinct 300 million years ago. This unusual marine beast was discovered in the 1950s in Illinois, and scientists couldn't even agree what it really was. Some thought it was a vertebrate, which means a group of creatures with a spine, like us humans. But a team of researchers in Japan studied many fossils of the Tully monster, using advanced laser scanning technology to check them in detail in 3 dimensions. There's still a lot they don't know about the Tully monster, but they managed to realize it didn't have any spine at all. Now the next step was to see what type of invertebrate it was. Could it be vertebrate-like, such as a land sled? Or are we talking about something closer to snails and worms? They also discovered the creature had segmentation in the head area that extended from its body, and that's not something bony creatures have. Still, in recent years, some researchers had the idea the Tully beastie could be related to jawless fish, such as lampreys. These fellows belong to the most ancient group of vertebrates, and are not pleasant to see either. In the case of lampreys, we're not talking about extinct animals. They're still out there somewhere, wandering the ocean and scaring other animals, or you, if you see it in the northern and western parts of the Atlantic Ocean where they live. And they've been here really long, even before the dinosaurs. A long time ago, long before humans or I even existed, there were eurypterids, weird creatures from a group we call arthropods, which includes spiders, insects, and crabs. But eurypterids were unlike anything you've ever seen before. They had a body shape similar to horseshoe crabs, with many segments that made up their body. Instead of legs, they had special appendages at the front that acted like oars. Some even call them giant scorpions, but most eurypterids were actually quite small, except for this special one, which was truly enormous. It could grow to a staggering length of about 8 feet. Wow! The next time you see a crab scuttling along the beach or a spider swimming its web, remember, we're lucky we only got mild versions of their ancient relatives, which, by the way, disappeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Whew. Now, some eurypterids were pretty fierce and fast predators. They would swiftly swim after their prey, chasing them down in the water. Others were more like scavengers, living on the bottom and feeding on whatever they could find along the way. They had a taste for the leftovers, like some sort of cleanup crew of the ancient oceans. Eurypterids love to spend their time in brackish water environments. It's water with more salinity than fresh water, but still less than seawater. Now imagine you're just floating around and all of a sudden you see this guy. No, it's not some weird tiny spaceship, and you won't see it floating in space, even though that's where it would perfectly fit in, as some weird creature from another planet you'd see in sci-fi movies. You'd actually see it floating in the sea, because we're talking about a really small animal with enormous eyes called Dilophosaurus. Each of its eye bulbs was about a quarter of its whole body length. That's what gives it that space look, like it might live on one of the oceans under the surface where we look for life, like Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or Titan, Saturn's biggest moon. I could easily imagine creatures like Dilophosaurus giving us a warm welcome once we get to Mars, too. Dilophosaurus had great vision. It would keep a keen eye out for any movement in its surroundings. Once it noticed something, it would swiftly launch its spiky appendages forward. At first, these things looked like tools for fixing stuff, but Dilophosaurus actually used them to capture smaller arthropods. The unusual thing is that even though it had such great eyesight, Dilophosaurus still spent most of its time catching prey in brighter waters near the surface. And yet, scientists found its fossils in the rock layers that are more often associated with darker environments, where animals such as deep-sea crinoids and vampire squids reside today. It's confusing. But one of the explanations for this says it's possible these deep-sea creatures actually lived in shallower waters in the past and later ended up in the depths as the geography of our planet changed over time. No one knew what Dilophosaurus really was. It could belong to a group of arthropods, and it seems to me that's where most of the world's weirdest creatures are. Some believe it could be related to mantis shrimp, while others compare it to blind, worm-like crustaceans that live in dark underwater caves. And check out this enormous worm lurking beneath the sandy ocean floor, patiently waiting for its next meal to swim by. These ancient creatures were like stealthy predators, perfectly camouflaged in their sandy lairs. And now, 20 million years later, scientists have found the remains of their hidden hideaways. The burrow they discovered, shaped like the letter L, was found preserved in ancient sediment on the seafloor of Taiwan. It was around 7 feet long and only an inch wide. That's where the ancestors of modern bobbit worms lived. Bobbit worms have been around for a long time. They can grow to be a few inches to a whopping 10 feet long. A pretty weird creature dominated the skies at the end of the dinosaur age in North America. We know it as Quetzalcoatlus, and it soared above famous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, showing them who the ultimate ruler of the skies was. Quetzalcoatlus belonged to a group of flying reptiles called pterosaurs. They were some of the biggest flying animals ever known to exist. When you think of Quetzalcoatlus, imagine an animal as tall as a giraffe. These incredible creatures had long necks, small bodies, long legs, and wings that were relatively short compared to their size. The biggest of its kind was really massive and held the title of being the largest flying creature of all time. They had long, pointed skulls, while some also had short crests at the back of their heads. And for a long time, researchers were confused about how these giant pterosaurs hunted for food. At first, some even believed that Quetzalcoatlus and its relatives were like giant vultures that scavenged the remains they would find around. They drew such a conclusion because Quetzalcoatlus fossils were found inland, away from the coast where other big pterosaurs were found, such as the crested Pteranodon. Plus, many thought these fellas were skilled at skimming, which means lurking over freshwater systems and catching fish. But it appears these massive animals were actually predators with excellent hunting skills. The exact technique they used to catch their prey remains a mystery, though. Now here's another cool discovery, a specific fossil as the oldest evidence of muscle tissue ever found. This fossil belongs to a group of animals that includes modern creatures such as jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. And it looks so cool and unique, right? It has bundles of fibers arranged in a four-fold symmetrical pattern, similar to what we see in cnidardians today. This arrangement is different from any other fossil from that period. Now this fossil may look weird, but it helps us understand the evolution of muscle tissue in animals. They, well, all of us actually, got new options for discovering different feeding strategies and generally new things to do thanks to muscles. And it's not like scientists usually get to study fossilized muscles. It's more that they learn about that based on how animals feed, reproduce, move, and do other things. So this cool fossil suggests animals may have had an earlier origin than we used to believe.
Every species on Earth, you, me, and that nasty neighbor of yours, is destined to go extinct someday. Just like what happened to the woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. Stats aren't bright. Scientists say that 99% of all animals that ever lived are now extinct. Hey, what's that look on your face? Going extinct is not the end of the story. Now listen up. Mammoths might make the greatest comeback ever and even be the key to saving humanity. Nope, they won't give away free money so that we don't have to work anymore, but they can sorta help the weather situation on our planet. In the Arctic tundra, there's this ground called permafrost. It's like soil in the form of ice. Soil turns permafrost when it stays super cold for 2 years straight. But now, permafrost is actively thawing out, and it's bad news for, well, everyone. Because while thawing, it releases a lot of carbon into the air. But what if we had large animals like mammoths there today? They would churn up the soil. The ground would freeze more deeply in winter. And then, in summer, a layer of grass would help keep the ground cool and prevent the permafrost from melting. Some scientists think that's a great solution. So now there's a company in the US that's trying to bring mammoths back to life. Okay, you got me. Not actual mammoths, but a sort of hybrid between an elephant and 1% mammoth DNA. It would be a northern elephant. Getting mammoth DNA is easier than you might think. They actually only went extinct about 10 to 14,000 years ago. Scientists are hoping to have their first elephant-mammoth hybrid by 2027. Let's hope it doesn't turn into a real-life Jurassic Park. Australia. A nightmarish place, and a home to the most fascinating creatures on Earth. But here, the sad fate befell the Tasmanian tiger, also known as thylacine. Don't mix it up with the Tasmanian devil. That one is living and thriving. Nope, the thylacine was a marsupial predator that used to chill in Australia, South Tasmania, and New Guinea. It was a nocturnal who preyed on other marsupials, like kangaroos. In the 30s, the farmers suddenly claimed that thylacines were eating their livestock. Looking back at it now, that was probably an exaggeration. But humans started to hunt poor thylacines until they were all gone. And then it turned out that hunting away the important predator isn't the brightest idea. Who would have thought? You see, thylacines kept things in check by eating bad animals. So once they disappeared, the Australian wildlife was basically doomed. 35% of total mammal extinctions on Earth happened here. That's an awful world record. I know it sounds gloomy, but hey, maybe we can fix this. Remember that company we mentioned? It wants to bring back the thylacine too. Luckily, many thylacine embryos are still preserved in jars, like some creepy pickles. If we bring them back to Tasmania, this could help revive the entire ecosystem. Would you be happy to see them back in the wild? Me too. And I would also be happy to see you hitting those like and subscribe buttons so you can keep up with amazing facts all year round. We also have some huge dreams about tiny creatures. Take a trip to Mount Hotham Ski Resort in Victoria, Australia, and here you can find the mountain pygmy possum, a tiny bundle of cuteness. These guys are super rare. We even thought that they were extinct. All we had was their fossils. But then, some skiers spotted a possum in a log pile at the ski lodge in 1966. Imagine suddenly making a great discovery while chilling on vacation. These little possums can spend 7 months of the year sleeping under the snow. They wake up occasionally to eat some stored food, and then they wake up in the spring to eat even more, find a mate, and go back to sleep again. What a relatable fella. Since they've made it into this video, you can guess they're pretty endangered. There are less than 2,000 left in the wild, all because their current homes don't fit them that well. But hooray, we can help them too! You see, their ancestors lived in lowland forests about 20 million years ago, so maybe mountain possums could live better if we moved them there? Of course, we can't just take them to the woods and expect them to survive. Instead, scientists want to slowly release possums into the forest and check up on how they get on with it. Let's hope these cute creatures will adapt to woodland life. The southern gastric brooding frog, also called the platypus frog, was quite a unique creature. It was discovered in 1972 in Queensland, Australia. Back then, this fella shocked the scientists with its super weird birthing practices. Check this out. The mother frog swallows her eggs, turning her stomach into the womb. Then she doesn't eat at all for 6 weeks straight. I could never. Meanwhile, the tadpoles hatch in her stomach, start to grow, and eventually get so big that the mom literally has to breathe through her skin. And then she literally spews out her offspring left and right. Bleh. But this insane process is a great evolutionary achievement, which is why it drew everyone's attention. But the wonder didn't last long. By the mid-80s, all known species of these frogs vanished from their natural habitats. Why? We have no idea. There are many theories, but almost no evidence to back them up. In any case, over the years, these guys officially became extinct. But it all changed in 2013. Scientists started a groundbreaking project named the Lazarus Project. Now they want to resurrect these frogs to learn cool cloning techniques from them. Are you guys ready to copy their genetic preservation method? Yeah, me neither. But let's dive deeper. Literally go in the water. Meet the coelacanth. This creature lived in the oceans back when the dinosaurs roamed our planet, and didn't even notice the asteroids. These guys are the Methuselahs of the sea. They can live up to 100 years, and they don't even start thinking about leaving offspring until they're around 55. At least they've got plenty of time to live for themselves. We actually thought this creature had gone extinct about 65 million years ago. But then, the first Latimeria specimen was discovered off the coast of South Africa in 1938. Now they're known as living fossils. And these fish are enormous. They weigh around 200 pounds. They're also super stylish, with those lobe-fished paddles that make them look like disco balls. Oh, and they're great aerialists. Thanks to those versatile fins, they can even do headstands and swim belly up. The coelacanth is also a bit of a homebody. It's not very energetic and likes to live in underwater caves during the day, only coming out at night to snack on smaller fish and squid. Another animal who's literally me. Now we're trying our best to preserve this species, and I won't be surprised if it outlives us all. And finally, let's talk about the largest and most awkwardly looking flightless bird from New Zealand, the South Island takahe. The tale of the takahe started way back in the Middle Ages. Humans accidentally hunted them all away, and by the late 19th century, it seemed there were none of them left. But then, they were rediscovered in New Zealand in 1948. Poor guys did all they could to hide from us in the mountains, but we still got them. But it's different now. Since then, we've been trying our best to save them from extinction. There's a takahe recovery program going on, and it shows great results. They managed to greatly boost the number of birds in the wild. As of 2023, the takahe population has grown to around 500 birds. They're now considered nationally vulnerable, not nationally critical. It's a little progress, but progress nonetheless. Let's keep it up.
When we look at creatures in the animal kingdom, we often have the following thought. If they have similar traits, they must be related somehow. Zebras, horses, and camels must have some common ancestor. Same goes for dogs and jackals. Somewhere back in their lineage, they must have some common great-great-great-grand wolf, right? Well, the way evolution works in nature is way more complex. Take, for instance, convergent evolution, which is when different creatures evolve independently from each other but end up having similar traits. We only need to look at sharks and dolphins to see how this works. At first glance, they look very similar, aquatic creatures with some species having roughly the same size. But turns out they're mostly unrelated. Sharks are fish. They reproduce by laying eggs and evolved to have the ability to sniff out blood in the water to feed themselves. Dolphins, on the other hand, are mammals. They're friendly and have a way more interesting social life. Take bottlenose dolphins, which have their own special whistles that they use similar to how humans use their names. Not only do they develop this type of whistle to introduce themselves to other dolphins, but they can also learn such names so they can better communicate with each other. Sure, sharks and dolphins did have a common ancestor, but this one lived in the sea almost 300 million years ago. It's safe to say, dolphins and sharks aren't even cousins these days. Another more shocking example of convergent evolution is that of whales and bats. Most of the creatures we can name on the top of our heads use light and sight to understand the world around them. But there is a specific set of creatures that relies on sound to paint them a picture of their environment. What they do is they emit a sound which bounces back to them depending on the object it hits. This ability is called echolocation. Animals that have this feature emit sounds at frequencies above human hearing, called ultrasound. Those sound waves bounce off objects while they move around, allowing them to figure out where they are in a certain space. Echolocation is mostly used by toothed whales and by some species of bats. What's similar in both of these animals is that they need to hunt in the darkness. Despite this, they echolocate in very different ways. Bats, for instance, use their throats to generate ultrasound from their mouth or nose. Then, they proceed to listen for changes in the echoes. Their echolocation is so finely tuned that they can distinguish targets less than 0.01 inches apart, even if their target is moving. Whales, on the other hand, echolocate by pushing air through their nasal cavity. This movement creates vibrations in a special fatty organ called the melon. This organ focuses and modulates the sound, which then passes into the water around the whale. Whales then pick up the reflections of these sounds through their lower jaw and around the ears. Another striking example of evolutionary convergence is that of ichthyosaurus and dolphins. Visually, the Mesozoic fish lizards named Ichthyosaurus seem very similar to modern dolphins. But the friendly mammals are much more related to giraffes and camels than the ancient creatures. Despite being 200 million years apart, they do share some common traits which mislead people into thinking they belong to the same species. But that's mostly because they lived in the same environment. They both evolved to feature dorsal fins, which keep them balanced while swimming. Now, let's look at Phytosaurus and crocodiles. The first ones were reptiles that roamed the Earth back in the Triassic period. They weren't dinosaurs, but they lived at the same time as the first dinosaurs did. Even though they look very similar, the first crocodiles popped up more than 70 million years later in the Cretaceous period. These two even fooled paleontologists at first. They initially assumed that phytosaurs were the ancestors of crocodiles. Placodonts and turtles look similar too. Placodonts, however, appeared about the same time as the dinosaurs did, somewhere around 235 million years ago. Like modern turtles, they lived in marine environments, but they were surrounded by predators. So, they evolved to have really strong shells to protect themselves. Turtles, however, made it to the scene around 100 million years later. Even modern cats have ancient lookalikes. They were called the Sparacidons, but they were carnivores and marsupials. They used to live in the South American area and resembled the saber-toothed tiger, which is now extinct. Speaking of saber-toothed tigers, how about one that's also related to the kangaroo? Yeah, this creature used to freely roam the Earth around 300 million years ago. The Thylacosmilus may have looked like a feline, but it was a marsupial, meaning it had a pouch of skin in which it carried its pups for a certain period after their birth, like kangaroos and opossums do today. It's difficult to estimate what they looked like since a full skeleton has never been found, but we do know they weighed between 180 to 260 pounds. When we picture a present-day elephant, we always imagine them with their tusks protruding upwards. Well, that's not how their ancestors did it. About 20 million years ago, there lived a prehistoric elephant-like creature named Deinotherium. It did, however, have both tusks curving down from their jaw. As with many other prehistoric creatures, we don't know why they had this feature the other way around. But one theory suggests they used them as anchors. By securing themselves to riverbanks, they were able to safely sleep without drifting off. The last thylacine passed away in the early 20th century. Their extinction was one of the most tragic natural events in modern times. For the last 2,000 years, they have been known to live only on the island of Tasmania. Despite the name, they looked more like foxes than felines. However, thylacines were marsupials rather than placental mammals like foxes. The two-lake wallaby was one of the most beautiful and majestic creatures ever to have lived. It used to be found in Australia and New Zealand. They were very similar to the kangaroos and featured fine fur with shifting bands of darker and lighter gray across their backs. Surprisingly, they were dubbed monkey face, but they had no connection whatsoever to modern monkeys, apart from both being mammals. What made them so special was the way they moved around. Their standard movement consisted of 2 short hops, followed by a long one. After that, the wallaby would simply stare into the sky. Don't be fooled though, the two-legged wallaby was extremely rapid. Females were generally taller than males, and they appear to have been quite sociable animals, at times being particularly fond of a certain location. They were also nocturnal. Hyracoodonts and horses share a lot of similar features, but hyracoodonts used to exist in the Eocene and Oligocene periods, and they went extinct around 23 million years ago. In their whole group, they featured very diverse species and came in many different sizes, from the small pony-like to the colossal Paraceratherium, which is one of the largest land-living mammals ever to exist. Modern horses, however, appeared around 2 million years ago. Let's do a little experiment together. Start by stretching your arms out. If you were to draw a line from your fingertips to your shoulder, it would measure around 28 inches. Now, try to picture an insect with a wingspan this big. Hold on a minute, you won't need a large can of bug spray, don't worry. They're extinct. But the gigantic Meganeuropsis did live around 250 to 300 million years ago. However, they most likely resembled the present-day dragonflies, despite not being technically related. Scientists figured out that they were not true dragonflies because of differences in the shape of their wing veins. Scientists still don't know why these bugs turned out so big. Some believe insects are limited in size because of the small quantity of oxygen they're able to take in. In the times when these insects roamed the Earth, the levels of oxygen in our atmosphere were much higher, so that might be one explanation. Other specialists think that they got so big because there wasn't any other predator large enough to pick them up from the ground.
It was one of the biggest creatures ever to roam the Earth. It was longer than your average school bus and could easily weigh more than 10 elephants combined. But where did it live? How did it end up having this size? And most importantly, why is it extinct nowadays? Let's find out. The Megalodon was the largest predator ever known in our planet's history. In terms of its location, the Megalodon lived practically in all waters on our globe, except near the poles. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is probably that the gigantic creature adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones liked to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. How do we know the Megalodon was so widely spread? we can only presume based on the fact that they discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The discussion of how the Megalodon got this size is still open in the scientific community. They recently found out that not all the specimens from this fascinating species reach the same huge size. This has to do with a little something called the Bergmann's rule, which says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The megalodons that reach cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. On the contrary, those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. But what did this enormous fish look like? Most modern depictions show the megalodon resembling an enormous great white shark. But well, it seems it may not necessarily be correct. The megalodon likely had a much shorter nose and a flatter jaw that looked almost squashed when compared with a great white shark. It also seems to have something in common with the modern blue shark: extra long pectoral fins. They needed these to support their weight and size while navigating the planet's waters. Lastly, the lady megalodons, seem to have been about twice as large as the gentlemen. As for their offspring, even a small megalodon was enormous, at least 6.5 feet from nose to tail. How do we know that? Because specialists have stumbled upon megalodon nursery habitats in Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida. Even the piles of used diapers were enormous. Nah, not really. Surely the scariest aspect of the megalodon's looks was its mouth. I mean, think about it. Megalodon had whales for dinner, so it obviously needed to open its mouth wide enough. Scientists have estimated that its jaw would span a mind-boggling size, 9 by 11 feet wide. Just to paint you a better picture, that means it could have easily gulped down 2 adult people side by side. Wait, which 2 adults? Those impressive jaws also feature 276 teeth. Based on modern reconstructions of the force of its bite, it looks like it may have been one of the most, if not the most, powerful animals of prey ever to exist. For comparison, humans can have a bite force of around 1,300 newtons. Today, great white sharks have been estimated to be able to bite down with a force of over 18,000 newtons. The megalodon tops all the records, with an estimated power of bite up to 10 times greater than that. It could basically crush a car with very little effort. Its teeth were also pretty amazing. Similar to sharks, the megalodon was fast in replacing its broken or worn teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, growing back damaged or missing teeth within about 48 hours. This means that an adult megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. It was nice of them to do that, though, since it's probably one of the reasons why megalodon teeth are so common in fossil records, and we're able to study them properly. To maintain its impressive physique, the megalodon had to eat somewhere around 2,500 pounds of food per day. Can't wrap your head around that? Well, it was the equivalent of 1¼ cows per day to survive. It's like if you had to eat 3,300 cans of tuna every day. I've used the word megalodon a lot, but have I mentioned where it comes from? When translated from Greek, it means giant tooth. Ah, those clever Greeks. However, this giant shark's full scientific name is a bit more complicated: Carcharocles megalodon. But are these gigantic predators actually extinct? We tend to believe so, but let's be honest for a second. We've come to know more about the surface of Mars than the depths of our oceans. Like, we've only explored 15% of our oceans altogether. Who knows what may be lying out there in the deep? Maybe some ancient predators? The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. The Challenger Deep, its deepest part, is so deep that you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in there and it would still be over a mile above the surface. That's deep. If a megalodon or 2 ever needed a place to crash, that would be a discreet enough location. However, the Mariana Trench is not a particularly comfy place to be in. Because it's cold and steeped in total darkness and all. The temperatures here are around 36 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. And to top it all off, the pressure is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So it's safe to assume that if any megalodon is hiding in here, its teeth and bones might not be looking so good. Because of the intense pressure here in the Mariana Trench, proteins and calcium start to dissolve and disintegrate. That's why, for example, the Haddell snailfish, the deepest dwelling fish we've discovered, has evolved to feature flexible cartilage instead of bones. To survive here, the Megalodon would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means they would have to either become luminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. While it may sound like an intriguing and good idea for a movie script, most scientists don't think it's possible. Why? Well, most of them say it's because of the Megalodon's size. Most foods that Megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Specialists believe that if these animals were actually still roaming our waters, there's no way we wouldn't know about it. They would need to come up for dinner every now and then, right? Their food is also the most likely cause of why the Megalodon is not alive anymore. While some specialists believe the Megalodon became extinct because of a drop in the ocean water temperature, most scientists suggested that the shifting food chain dynamics may have been more to blame. Why? Because at some point, there was less and less of its primary food source, baleen whales, and at the same time, the numbers of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks like the great white shark and whales, increased. The Megalodon did live on this planet a lot more than we did, and way back when we didn't even exist yet. They were here for nearly 70 times longer than we, modern humans, have, inhabiting the oceans for around 20 million years. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago. The Megalodon managed to survive for so long mostly because of its unbeatable size. I mean, they can make a meal out of almost everything in the sea at the time. We may think about both of them as prehistoric creatures, but the Megalodons and the dinosaurs never coexisted on Earth. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later. That's because the oldest Megalodon fossils we have yet discovered are from the Miocene epoch, which began 23 million years ago. So long, Meg! Psst, run! Really, it's not safe out there. There's a saber-toothed tiger lurking around. You better be careful. What are you doing? Don't peek. Okay, just one little peek. How's this possible, you ask? That's because you're in virtual reality, of course. These cool but very dangerous-looking big cats were alive during the last ice age. What if they decided to show up at your doorstep out of nowhere? Knock knock, a saber-toothed tiger is waiting for you to buy its cookies. Meanwhile, the coelacanth, this massive-looking fish, comes from a lineage that's been around for over 300 million years. We thought they didn't exist anymore until 1938, that is, when a live coelacanth was found again. Since then, they've been roaming the waters of the east coast of Africa and the waters of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Man, I wouldn't want to go for a swim and meet one of these fellas face to face. Their jaw has an intercranial joint, which means their mouth opens up by a lot. This is so they can eat large prey, like me. Not good. They're huge, too. Imagine a fish that's as long as you're tall and weighing as much as an average human. The takahe, a flightless bird, was thought to be gone in the year 1898. They're very cute, small and multicolored, usually not taller than your knee. But picture this. You're out for a hike in the Murchison Mountains. Looking around, you spot the bird you thought was extinct. But there they are, as happy as ever, surviving and chilling. Whole colonies of takahes was indeed found just 50 years after they were pronounced extinct. Good job, tiny little birds. A singing dog. Ever heard of those? Riley does sing sometimes when he's bored or hungry, but these are real performers. New Guinea singing dogs. They've been only recently discovered again in the wild for the first time in 50 years. Still, they were never completely extinct to begin with. New Guineans made sure they were safe next to them. But in the wild? Very rare and hard to catch a sight of. Look, there goes one. The New Guinea singing dogs are called so because of their famous high-pitched singing. They sometimes sing together too. A dog choir of sorts, where they all howl together. I bet they sing better than I do in the shower. Not going far from this area, we have bats, but these ones are sort of different. You see, their ears are enormous. I guess that's why they're called the New Guinea big-eared bats. Clever. The species was found again when one of them was accidentally caught in a bat trap. Until then, I guess they were playing hide-and-seek with us, because up till 1890, they had been thought to be gone. They're still not out of the danger zone because of habitat loss. Imagine you discover a fossil of a species you thought had been extinct for a long time, yet 2 years later, a whole living group of said species is found. Well, this is exactly what happened in 1977 with the Majorcan midwife toad. It's sort of brownish in color with darker brown that makes up its skin spots. Other than that, it's just a small toad with googly eyes. The group of live toads was found close to where the fossil was, on the island of Majorca. There aren't many of them left, about 500 in fact, and as of right now, they're declared vulnerable by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Now, are you a fan of tortoises? You will be when you take a look at this huge beauty. It's called the Ferdinanda Island Galapagos tortoise. It hasn't been seen since 1906. But on February 17, 2019, we were finally able to look at one of these beautiful creatures. It's probably out there with a few of its mates right now, but they also don't allow themselves to be seen. We only know they exist because there's a few tracks and scents. With yet another frog, we have the horned marsupial frog. They're out and about in Ecuador, in the Chocó Forest to be more specific. They're called this way because of their distinctive horns directly on top of their eyes. You know the pouch kangaroos use to carry their offspring? Well, the female horned marsupial frog also has that, except it's on the back, so it acts as sort of a backpack. They develop their embryos there, and when they're ready to come out, they hatch as complete infants, unlike regular frogs where they start out as tadpoles. One more toad, the starry night toad or harlequin toad. They're black and covered with loads of white spots all over them. Lost for 30 years, it was discovered back in 2019. Picture them as big bodyguards, water bodyguards to be exact. Oh, that's a very big toad on your screen. Well, for the Arhuaco people, that's exactly what they are, guardians of water. They also have their own name for them, Guna. Sounds like a cheese. When scientists found them yet again, they came across 30 of these little creatures, but initially, they were expecting only one. Well, what a nice surprise. Here's a tiger for you, although it doesn't quite look like your typical tiger. It's called the Tasmanian tiger, and it seemingly disappeared since 1936. But then, out of nowhere, people started seeing them out there in the wild just 5 years ago in 2016. They sort of resemble dogs more than tigers, or a fox maybe. Just take a look at its muzzle. Maybe even a mix of both. Then, a few others started popping up too. And if you happen to think you're seeing one right in front of you, but you're not quite sure, check if they've got stripes on their back. They're definitely out there, but still technically marked as extinct by the IUCN. Okay, picture a horse that looks straight out of a movie scene. Tiny, gorgeous fur, very well behaved. It's tiny, but it's not a pony. It's a Caspian horse. They have an interesting backstory to them. They were discovered by Louise Leyland, who got married to an aristocrat in 1957. Having moved to Tehran, Iran, she didn't quite like how the horses behaved there, so she took matters into her own hands. She took a few people with her, and off they went to the Caspian Sea mountain. And in there, they found 3 of these beautiful tiny little horses. Well, that's how the story goes. Coming up next, a possum that was found in an unexpected place. Guess where? You have 3 options to pick from: hiding in a ski resort, in the Australian outback, or in someone's apartment in the bathroom. Which one do you choose? You have 3 seconds. The right answer is a ski resort. Yes, this possum is called the mountain pygmy possum, and it's originating from Australia. So far, there are 3 different living populations of this tiny possum, but it was believed to be extinct until just 1966. There are fewer than 100 of them, so the IUCN has marked them as critically endangered. Also from Australia is the night parrot, an absolute delight to birdwatchers. Very beautiful, yet mysterious. These little fellas live in very remote areas. You can probably count on the fingers of your hand how many times these birds have been seen since they were found again in 1979. That's how rare they are. Have you ever seen a pygmy tarsier? Neither have I. It was only in 2008 that 3 of them were caught. Scientists don't really want to lose track of their movements again, so what they did was gift them with tiny little collars. This way they can live their life as happy as ever and will know they're safe. The last one I want to tell you about is the tree lobster, but as the name might mistakenly tell you, they're not really lobsters. They're just big black bugs with huge legs. Their extinction story is a sad one. In 1920, a cargo ship got stuck on Lord Howe Island, and it had rats aboard. These rats fled the ship and ran straight to land. Even though tree lobsters are bigger than most insects, they're still relatively small compared to rats. The poor things never stood a chance. Still, in 2004, life shone again for these distinct critters. A pair of Australian scientists were out and about on the island and came across 24 of them. All of them were living beneath one single shrub. Hey, if there's enough space for everyone, it's not small, it's cozy. Bottom line, it's better to be distinct than extinct. Don't you agree? With more than 8 billion people in the world today, it's hard to imagine there was a time when there were so few human beings that they almost went extinct. It happened about 900,000 years ago when our ancient ancestors faced a crisis. Recent studies tell us there were only about 1,280 of them left, which is an incredibly small number. It's like just one village or a very, very small town left alone on the whole planet. The human race got into a population bottleneck where almost 98% of people disappeared, and things were tough for them for more than 100,000 years. We don't completely understand why this happened, but it was likely the result of tremendous changes in Earth's climate. It was a time when periods of cold weather lasted longer, the sea was colder, and there were more glaciers. Monsoons were immensely powerful, and yet there was less rain. These changes had an impact on wildlife species in Africa and Eurasia, and many plants and animals that were food sources for people disappeared. But at some point, our ancestors showed their strength and managed to bounce back despite tough times. The numbers started to go up again, because people learned how to handle fire better. Plus, temperatures got warmer too. But what would the world look like if nature had defeated us and it all had really stopped for humanity back then? Let's take a trip to some parallel dimension where it really happened. In that universe, there wouldn't be empires, pyramids, and impressive achievements that some old civilizations left us. No neighborhoods, cities, your favorite park, or that bench where you like to sit and drink your coffee. No coffee. Ouch, that hurts. No pools, adventure parks, and no rush at the beaches. No creature would be able to go to another continent separated by the ocean. There would be no ships or planes that could carry it. Animals would have to wait for tectonic plates to move again to visit new territories. Wow, you've just realized how incredibly silent the world is. All because nature almost never produces as much noise as humans do. Our buildings are noisy, together with cars, motorcycles, and all other vehicles. If you live somewhere by the airport, you know how much noises planes can make too. And here, no one's phone's ringing. You don't hear music coming from bars or gyms. Wow, look how incredibly blue the sky is. You've never seen a sky like that in your world. The rain and wind scrub the surface of our planet clean, although there's not much work to be done since there's no dust and smog humans produce. I mean, there is dust, but a different kind, one that nature creates. We don't really notice it since we have so many heaters and air conditioning systems that blow air and all that dust around. The only drinking water you see is in lakes and rivers, and lots of different animals get together in these areas. It takes a while to get used to it. Wherever you go, there are wild animals passing by. There are no dogs, cats, or other pets you're used to. There's no electricity either. In case you've brought your phone, take pictures as fast as possible because you won't be able to charge your gadget when it runs out of battery. There's no internet though, so you'll be the only one who will see the photos. It's so weird to see grass so tall and wild. No one mows it, so it's hard to walk, especially considering there are no roads. And you don't have a scythe or any other tool that could help you clear your way, because human civilization hasn't reached that level of progress. Wow, there are plants you've never seen before. Every time a tree drops a seed, something new might grow. And there are no humans to select which plants they like and which they don't. You suddenly feel nostalgic, thinking of carrots, broccoli, potatoes, and all other vegetables people once started growing on their farms. You can hear tons of bugs buzzing around. We usually do everything to get rid of them, and now, without humans, you get to see how annoying they really are. Hey, the sun is going down. Without electric lights, all creatures just follow the rhythm of nature. So, if you're up for a late-night walk, wait for the moon and stars to lighten your path. But be aware of night predators. You may face creatures that didn't survive in the world where humans rule. Fire. Luckily, there's a river nearby, so you jump into the water to get to the other side. Fires happen more frequently in the world without humans. For instance, lightning can strike a tree or set a brush on fire. No one is there to put the flames out, so fires just keep spreading until at some point they burn themselves out. It's hard to see the world like this, but it's even harder to accept that Earth is fine without us. Just like it's doing well without dinosaurs, megalodons, woolly mammoths, dodos, and other ancient creatures that went extinct. Back to the research. Some scientists don't think our ancient ancestors were really that close to extinction. To get these results, researchers used FitCoal, a special tool that helps study changes in ancient human populations by looking at the genetic information of modern people. They examined DNA from over 3,000 individuals in Africa and other places for this study. Some believe that the actual population numbers might have been bigger. The method used focuses on a small group of breeding individuals and may not exactly represent the whole population. There may be many archaeological sites in Eurasia and Africa that date back to the time when this population decline might have happened, so it may have affected just some groups of people in certain areas. Either way, not only wasn't it the end, but it was a new beginning. Two ancestral chromosomes combined to create a structure known as chromosome 2 in modern humans. This might have been the start of a new species, because there was a split between our ancestors and other ancient humans, such as Neanderthals and Denisovans, our ancient cousins. Some evidence tells us this idea is plausible because our common ancestor lived about 500,000 to 700,000 years ago. Well, humans did survive all those devastating moments in history, but scientists believe that the extinction of our species is a matter of when, not if. Our fields will overgrow, cities will end up in ruins, and bridges will fail. Nature quickly reclaims the landscape where humans don't go. Check out how these roots and trees have taken over the temple in Cambodia. Roman ruins still defy time for over 1,500 years now. Some of the buildings and things we create in the modern world will do it too. Nature will break everything down at some point, and if humans were to go extinct, who would replace us? It took 200 million years for our kind to evolve from the first mammals. Who can repeat this entire process again? The last common ancestor of chimps and humans lived 8 million years ago. Knowing this, it seems possible that if Homo sapiens went extinct, a new species capable of using technologies would evolve from chimps. But hold on. There's something called the Fermi paradox. Even though there are hundreds of millions of rocky planets that could host life in our galaxy, we don't see any evidence of its existence. Our galaxy is 13.5 billion years old. so you can't say life hasn't had time to develop. One possible explanation is that certain crucial steps in the evolution of intelligent life are so rare they hardly ever happen. So, Earth would get along fine without us. The only ones who would care are us. And right now, we need to care a lot. The water is bubbling under the fishing boat as if something is coming up out of the water. It gets closer and closer. The water seems to boil. Suddenly, you see giant jaws and glistening teeth. Seconds later, a huge shark jumps out of the water and crushes the boat in one bite. It was the Megalodon, the largest fish that ever existed on Earth. Now, we pictured the Megalodon as this, an enlarged version of the white shark for a long time. But scientists continue to argue about its appearance. So far, they agree that the image of this giant shark was wrong. Here's the data that scientists are sure of. Size, about 50 feet long. That's as big as a school bus and comparable to the length of a subway car. 8.5 times the height of an average person. Let's compare it to the modern white shark. The Megalodon is 3 times bigger, but that's just a rough estimate. We don't have a fully preserved skeleton of the Megalodon. That's because it didn't have any bones, but cartilage. Not much of that left in the 3.6 million years since the Megalodons went extinct. All that survived were teeth and a few vertebrae. By comparison, dinosaurs went extinct about 66 million years ago. But their solid bones are perfectly preserved, and we have many different examples of their skeletons. Scientists have calculated the size of a Megalodon based on its teeth and jaw. Now, this is one tooth. It's about 7 inches long, bigger than the palm of your hand, and 3 times the size of a modern white shark's teeth. The Megalodon jaw was 6 feet wide and chalked up 5 rows of teeth, a total of 276 razor-sharp chompers. The other preserved remains are the vertebral column. It consists of 150 vertebrae, each 6 inches wide. They contain much calcium because, well, Megalodon love fresh cold milk. Nah, it's because the vertebrae had to withstand the enormous mass of a giant shark. Based on those fossils, scientists created a model and calculated only the approximate size of the Megalodon. But it could hardly have been any bigger. It's all about breathing. The bigger the fish, the more oxygen it needs, which means a larger gill area. That's the organ that filters the water and collects oxygen. If the Megalodon were any larger, it would have trouble breathing. So, scientists believe that 50 feet is the maximum size of an individual. On average, they were a few feet smaller. Whew. Now, let's talk weight. On average, one Megalodon weighed about 30 to 35 tons. By comparison, a white shark weighs 1 ton, which is 30 times less. Hey, trust me. A school bus is 4 times lighter at 7.5 tons. The weight of a Megalodon can be compared to an empty Boeing 737. But the modern blue whale beats the Megalodon in size and weight. 98 feet long versus 50, almost twice as long. Blue whale's weight is about 180 tons. That's like 6 Megalodons or 6 passenger planes, or like 33 adult elephants. Hey, don't you love the comparisons? Now, about the appearance of the Megalodon. Scientists believe it didn't look like a white shark. The Megalodon belongs to a different fish family and most likely looked like a giant sand tiger shark. Flattened snout, small eyes. Its dorsal fin is moved backwards. The sand shark has 2 dorsal fins about the same size. The coloration is light brown with a white belly and may have had brown-red spots like a sand shark all over its body. We used to think of the Megalodon as something scary from the first finds of its fossils. That was back in the Renaissance era. People found some teeth in the rocks. At first, these teeth were thought to be the tongues of dragons or snakes. And here's the first drawing of what the owner of these teeth supposedly looked like. A massive snout with a scary nose and a bunch of razor-sharp teeth. We also have the evidence that Megalodons were brutal hunters, kings of the food chain. The first combat tool in their arsenal was the battering ram. The Megalodon was a slow swimmer, though. It could only accelerate up to 11 miles per hour. In comparison, the modern white shark can reach 35 miles per hour in a dash for its meal. The fastest human swimmer could only go 6 miles per hour. Well, good luck with that. But the Megalodon had incredible mass. Though slow, its battering ram had tremendous power. The Megalodon would take its prey by surprise. It had only one chance to hit it. If it missed, it would take too long for a second round. The maneuverability of the Megalodon was comparable to a large truck. But if the ram was successful, the prey was stunned and couldn't move. At this point, the Megalodon aimed at vulnerable spots, like the fins and tail of the prey. Scientists have found many ancient whale remains with Megalodon tooth marks. It turned out that the giant shark knew where its prey's vital organs were located and could strike at them. When the prey was immobilized, the Megalodon bared its teeth. An adult person could easily fit into its open jaw at full height, and according to various estimates, the bite force of the Megalodon was almost 11 tons. Now imagine the weight of 3 SUVs concentrated at the tip of a sharp tooth. That's 9 times the power of the largest white shark bite, and 6 times the power of the modern record holder for biting, the saltwater crocodile. Here, look at a map of where the remains of the Megalodon were found. South and North America, Europe, Asia, Australia. It was the master of all seas and was comfortable anywhere on our planet. We've even found some remains of the giant shark in freshwater sediments. Perhaps it wasn't afraid to enter rivers to hunt. Now, other scientists say that maybe the Megalodon wasn't even a predator, all because of its size. It couldn't swim fast. It couldn't even make short dashes like the white shark. If prey tried to escape, the Megalodon didn't rush into pursuit because it could never catch up with it. Another problem is the skeleton of the Megalodon. The cartilage is weaker than the bones, so the musculature of the giant shark was not as massive and robust in the first place. The Megalodon may even have been a scavenger and never got into fights. This is one of the reasons why ancient sharks became extinct. Megalodons like shallow, warm waters, with temperatures ranging from 53 degrees Fahrenheit. But over 3 million years ago, the climate turned colder. This deprived the Megalodons of territories and plenty of food. The primitive whales that had been the main diet of the giant sharks began to disappear. Faster predators took the remnants of food. The Megalodon started to starve. In evolution, a new player entered the field, the toothed whales, ancestors of the modern killer whales. They lived in packs and had bigger brains than the Megalodon. So, over time, they started to compete with the Megalodon. They took advantage of its clumsiness. A group of killer whales could easily win a competition against a giant shark. Many scientists believe this was the reason for the disappearance of the largest shark in the world. But there are theories that the Megalodon is still alive and roaming the dark waters of our planet. Several Australian fishers have allegedly encountered a shark of incredible size, but no one can confirm these testimonies. Fans of this theory believe that giant sharks can hide in deep waters away from human eyes. In the Mariana Trench, for example, it's the deepest place on our planet. It's deeper than if you stuck Mount Everest in the water, and we've even found the teeth of a Megalodon there. But science says that such a giant shark couldn't live in the Mariana Trench for many reasons. One, it's too cold. The Megalodon was probably a cold-blooded fish, so it had to use the warmth of its environment to survive. But the water in the Mariana Trench is cold, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the deeper down, the less sunlight gets in there. The second reason is pressure. Every 30 feet deep increases the pressure by 1 atmosphere. That is, at the depth of 100 feet, the water presses you 3 times harder than you would feel it at the surface. The weak muscles and cartilage of the Megalodon wouldn't allow it to dive too deep into the Mariana Trench. And most importantly, food. The farther from the ocean surface, the fewer living organisms. Megalodons used to eat primitive whales, ranging from 10 to 20 feet. Small fish only inhabit the Mariana Trench. A Megalodon would never be able to catch one. And, judging by its size, all the Megalodon did was eat and then look for food again. Compare its weight to that of a human. The average human should get about 2,000 calories a day with an average weight of about 180 pounds. The Megalodon weighed 470 times that and needed many more calories. So, even all the fish inhabiting the Mariana Trench could hardly feed a Megalodon for even a few days. So, all these theories, of course, are not true. But still, it's just smart to be careful out there. Know what I mean?
Komodo dragons are the world's heaviest lizards you can see today, mostly seen in Indonesia. But that might not be where these giant scary creatures really came from. Scientists found their fossils in eastern Australia, and what's interesting is they were about 4 million years old. They're dominant in the food chain and can take down really big animals like deer, water buffalo, and wild boar. Komodo dragons will basically eat almost anything that comes their way. Since Komodo dragons are not so picky when it comes to their meal, people believed for a long time that their bites can be fatal because of the number of bacteria in their mouths. In reality, they're one of the few venomous lizards on Earth. Gharial really looks like a creature you'd see walking by dinosaurs and fighting for its spot in the food chain in prehistoric times. These fellas have been on our planet for tens of millions of years. Look at its long, narrow mouth and sharp teeth. Its snout might look odd at first, but it's perfect to catch the food they like the most: fish. They're also good parents, even the most dedicated ones in the world of reptiles. Females lay their eggs in multiple nests close together and keep them safe from the river and potential predators. When young sense danger, they will rush to the nearest gharial and even clamber onto their heads to hide from what's chasing them. Sturgeon looks like that simple, primitive, ancient fish for a reason. It's been on our planet for at least 250 million years. Its fossils are all over the northern hemisphere. You can mostly find them in big freshwater rivers and lakes, but some species tend to travel to the oceans and return to lakes and rivers only when they need to breed. On average, they live 50 to 60 years and grow up to 18 feet. Many of them leap out of the water and make a loud splash. You can hear on the surface even if you're a half a mile away. No one knows why. It could be the way they communicate with other sturgeons. Solenodon. It's a venomous mammal with a chunky body and short legs. It's been living in the Caribbean area for more than 70 million years. They can climb, but still spend most of their time on the ground. There, they move in an irregular path with a waddling gait, but when necessary, they can run pretty fast for short distances. They have a special way of communication: chirps, twitters, clicks, squeaks, and squeals. They have specific skin glands which give them a goat-like odor. At night, they like to search for invertebrates. They probe soil and leaf litter soil using their long snout. It's flexible, similar to our shoulder joint. This way, they're more mobile and they can explore narrow crevices, while using their sharp claws to help them to tear apart rotten tree trunks. Oh yeah, snails, lizards, frogs, land crabs, bird eggs. They're welcome on the menu as well. The sea lamprey is an ancient parasitic fish that lives in the western and northern Atlantic Ocean. Because of their body shape, people sometimes inaccurately describe them as lamprey eel. This species has remained mostly the same for over 340 million years and have gone through at least 4 big extinction events. They have a pretty well-developed sense of smell. That's why they use odors to communicate with each other and navigate their way through. Check out their teeth. They have at least 12 rows of them arranged in circles. A single nostril lies at the top of their heads. They're like sea vampires since they suck other fish's blood. Some lamprey species are non-carnivorous, and what's crazy, they don't eat at all. They just live off the energy they stored back in times when they were young and were eating. You must admit, echidna is a real cutie. A bit bizarre and a walking contradiction though. First, they look like a mix between an anteater, a badger, and a porcupine. They are mammals, but a primitive type that lays eggs. The only such type of living mammal we usually call monotremes is a platypus. Also, echidnas are also classified as short or long-beaked, even though they don't have beaks at all, just fleshy noses that can be rather short or long. They're covered in hollow spines, and these are actually modified hairs. Fur between the spines is what gives them insulation. They look weird, but it obviously works for them since they've been unchanged for tens of millions of years. Alligator gar is a curious animal that looks more like it's mythical than real. It's not a mixture of a koi carp and a crocodile, and it's not related to alligators. But check its sharp teeth and crocodilian head. It's easy to see where the name comes from. They're more than 150 million years old, and this is the biggest fish species in North America that spends nearly all of its time in fresh water. They can tolerate brackish water and even stop by for salt waters, but swamps, bayous, lakes, and the sluggish pools of big rivers are still their favorites. They're not dangerous for humans. Some call the shoebill stork the most terrifying bird in the world. One thing they could certainly win is definitely a staring contest. They can stand literally motionless for hours, holding their bills down against their neck, and their golden eyes certainly tell you they're up to no good. They're known for their strong bite. These birds may be more related to pelicans than storks, since their vocal organs are similar. Babirussas, sometimes even called prehistoric pigs. In the Malay language, their name means pig deer. Check out their barrel-shaped stocky bodies, somehow perfectly balanced on delicate legs that look like deer's legs. Males have large tusks that grow upwards through their snouts and at some point curve back towards the head. There are cave drawings that depict them, which are over 35,000 years old. Unlike regular pigs, Babirussas rarely dig or root into the ground. They're missing what's called a rostral bone in their nose. That's the bone that keeps the snout stable and rigid. Without it, these animals can't pierce the hard dirt. Chinese giant salamander is a funny-looking creature that's been roaming our planet for 170 million years already. We're talking about the biggest amphibian in the world. It can grow to be bigger than some people, up to 6 feet long, with a weight of 110 pounds. Their tail may make up more than half the body length. It's hard to notice them because this specific color helps the animal to blend in with the floor of the rivers where they usually live. Tuatara might look like a regular iguana at first, but it's literally a living fossil since it's been around for about 250 million years. Even its body shows its ancient history. There's a primitive third eye on the top of their head. It's hard to see it though, especially because some tuataras have scales over it. Scientists think it's some sort of an ancient light sensor. The reptiles used it to set their both seasonal and daily biological functions. Tuataras can hear sounds too, even though they don't have external ears like modern-day reptiles. Fish hear sounds in the water in a similar way. Jellyfish have been present on our planet for over 500 million years. Yep, that means they're 250 million years older than the first dinosaurs. But their bodies are soft and almost completely water, so their fossils are really rare. The oldest one was discovered in Utah and was 505 million years old. One species of jellyfish is basically immortal. When it faces some kind of environmental stress that would mean an end of life for other jellyfish, these can just revert back to be a tiny blob of tissue, and then they develop, starting their life all over again. It was the largest fish our Earth had ever seen, and its bite was strong enough to crush a car. The largest of its teeth found was the length of a remote control. It consumed about 2,500 pounds of food a day. That's like 3,300 cans of tuna for you. The earliest Megalodon fossils are from about 20 million years ago, but you won't see its skeleton, and that's because the mighty Meg had no bones. A skeleton made from bones gives most animals their body shape and strength. Sharks, though, come from the same subclass as rays, skates, and sawfish and have cartilage instead of bones. Cartilage is a tissue that is softer and more flexible than bones, but it's still tough enough to shape the body and protect the internal organs. Some areas are more flexible since cartilage is weaker, and some, like the shark's head, are much tougher thanks to calcified cartilage. Their snouts, though, are made of really soft and flexible cartilage to work like a bumper in case of a collision with some dangers. Who knows if they'd be able to do all this with a heavy skeleton? Plus, cartilage makes their jaws more flexible, and they can open their mouths much wider than they would with a jaw made of bone. Our hero, Meg, was no exception, and it had the strongest bite of all living creatures, which was also made possible by a skeleton made of cartilage. Sharks take full advantage of their cartilage. It helps them swim and turn fast while hunting. One drawback of this type of skeleton is that it was really tricky for scientists to establish the shape and size of Meg. Normally, they would do it using fossilized bone skeletons or their parts. With Meg, they had to guess based on the teeth they found and comparisons with living relatives. A more recent 3D computer model was based partially on scans of a preserved spine discovered in the 1860s. The model showed that Meg was bigger, faster, and even hungrier than scientists had previously thought. Looks like an average Megalodon was 52 feet long. That's slightly bigger than the height of the Hollywood sign and weighed 10 times as heavy as an elephant. There were also much bigger creatures. Scientists still aren't sure how the Megalodon got this size. The fact that there were bigger and smaller Megs probably has to do with a little something called Bergmann's rule. It says that the temperature of the surrounding environment affects the animal's body size because they either need to conserve or shed heat. The Megalodons that reached cooler waters probably needed more body weight to make sure they survived in low temperatures. Those living in warmer waters had to be smaller to avoid burning up. If the researchers were correct in their calculations, it also means that Meg reached a cruising speed of over 3 miles per hour, which is much faster than other sharks. The still-living great white shark can cover a distance of nearly 7,000 miles without stopping, which is 9/10 as long as the diameter of Earth. It looks like the Megalodon could have gone much further. Megalodons managed to survive on our planet for nearly 70 times longer than humans have. They were roaming the oceans for around 20 million years, and you could see them pretty much anywhere except near the poles. Scientists discovered the most northern fossils off the coast of Denmark and the most southern in New Zealand. The reason why there were no Megalodon teeth found in Antarctica is most likely that these adapted to only warm tropical and subtropical waters. The younger ones like to keep to the shores, while full-grown adults preferred coastal areas, but they could easily move into the open ocean as well. When our planet went through a period of global cooling and drying, and the seas began to freeze around 3.6 million years ago, there was less and less room for Meg to thrive. Much of their prey, like smaller whales, seals, and sea turtles, disappeared or relocated to waters that were too cold for our hero. And at the same time, the number of its natural competitors, like smaller predatory sharks, like the great white shark, and whales increased. This shifting food chain dynamics could have been even more dangerous for the Meg than the cold ocean water. You're used to seeing them on the big screen as heartless monsters, but these huge sharks were actually loving and caring family guys. Scientists discovered several Megalodon nursery areas in Florida, Maryland, Panama, and off the coast of Spain. It looks like they gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. Then, little Megs would stay there with adults protecting and raising them until they were ready to fight off predators. The mighty Meg had 276 teeth in 5 rows in its mouth. Similar to other sharks, it was fast in replacing its worn-out or lost teeth. With 4 or 5 rows of teeth in its mouth, it basically acted like a conveyor belt, able to grow back damaged or missing teeth. This means that an adult Megalodon probably would have grown several thousand teeth throughout its lifetime. Although the great white shark is often mentioned as Meg's closest relative, they'd hardly be distant cousins. The ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best friends and even rivaled each other. The great white shark wouldn't win in a head-to-head fight with a Meg, but it was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the giant's prey quickly. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as the whales swam to the cooler new seas. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. We also speak of Meg as an extinct giant, but can we be 100% sure it isn't hiding somewhere as we speak? After all, we've only explored 5% of our oceans altogether. The Mariana Trench is the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, and you could dip the whole of Mount Everest in its deepest part, and over a mile of it would still be above the surface. If a megalodon or two needed a place to hide, that would be the perfect spot. It wouldn't be the coziest place to live, though, with its cold water and total darkness. Plus, the pressure there is 1,000 times stronger than at sea level. So, if a Meg really were hiding down there, it would have serious issues with its teeth, because calcium would dissolve under that pressure. To survive here, it would also need to learn to navigate in complete darkness. That means it would have either become bioluminescent or evolve to grow massive eyes like the giant squid. If the Meg were still around and true to its dietary choices, it would have to eat smaller fish, and that would be a problem for us humans. Especially those of us who love fish, that is. And the ocean isn't cooling down these days. The Megalodon would love its temperature and would thrive and reproduce faster than ever. Those giants would create some massive problems for cargo ships and cruising vessels. In case you're now scared at the thought of meeting a Megalodon, relax. Most scientists don't think it's possible because of our hero's size. Most foods that megalodons like to eat live in shallow ocean areas and not in the deep, deep sea. Meg would need to come up for dinner every now and then, and it's kinda hard to miss a creature this big. They're both giant prehistoric creatures to us, but the megalodons and the dinosaurs never actually coexisted. The dinosaurs probably died out about 66 million years ago. Megalodons seem to have appeared a bit later.
When we say extinction, we usually think of dinosaurs that went to lunch with a humongous asteroid and were wiped out from the face of the Earth. We don't think of ourselves possibly going away in the near future. But what we forget is that there have been 5 mass extinctions that our planet witnessed in the last 500 million years, not just one. And we can be nearing the 6th one, where one of the species to possibly disappear are humans. The first great mass extinction came about 440 million years ago in the Ordovician period. Back then, life was mostly thriving in the oceans and along the coastlines. Biodiversity was great at the time. There were thousands of different species, trilobites, sea scorpions, and all kinds of weird-looking mollusks and even fish. You name it, Ordovician had it. But then, the temperature around the planet started to drop. The overall warm climatic zones became colder and colder, until the oceans got covered with thick sheets of ice. Most of the marine species weren't ready for such abrupt changes. Imagine a trilobite serenely crawling along the bottom of the sea and suddenly bumping into a glacier. Yeah, it's like living your entire life in a beach bungalow, only to find yourself in an igloo one day. The event was dubbed Late Ordovician Glaciation, which led to Late Ordovician mass extinction. Over 60% of all species that lived in that period disappeared. Only ancient fossils were left for paleontologists to discover hundreds of millions of years later. Nobody still knows exactly what caused the temperature drop at the time. The main theory is that the CO2 levels in the atmosphere fell sharply. It led to cooling down the entire surface of Earth, but the reasons for such a collapse are still under debate. However, that wasn't the worst mass extinction event in the history of our planet. Despite more than half of all living creatures being wiped out, biodiversity on Earth restored itself in the following 5 million years. Life went on until another catastrophe struck. Within the span of 20 to 25 million years, from about 375 to 350 million years ago, several extinction events occurred. They were like pulses that damaged a lot of marine species. Arthropods, like scorpions and mites, lots of various fish, including sharks, all were in decline. Overall, more than 75% of all living beings disappeared back then, who were mainly in the oceans. The reasons for such events are even more unclear than those before the late Ordovician mass extinction. Most scientists now believe those waves were caused by changes in the sea level and a lack of oxygen in the oceans. A lot of plants quickly moved to land and adapted to living outside of water. And since they were the main source of oxygen in the ocean, all those fish and sea scorpions were in for a very unpleasant surprise. The booming growth of plants on land also removed much of the CO2 in the atmosphere and enriched it with oxygen instead. This led to an abrupt temperature fall again, and although no new ice age followed, many land animals couldn't adapt to the new conditions. The bitter irony was that the major part of them had just recently crawled out on land from the ocean, looking for a better environment. Ah, well. This was only the first wave, though. The reasons for the second one, that came about several million years later, are still unknown. Scientists think there could have been mass volcanic eruptions, or even meteor strikes, but those are just hypotheses. Then another 100 million years passed without much trouble. Species rose and fell, evolved and disappeared, but the cycle of life continued, until about 250 million years ago, when the third mass extinction event occurred. It happened in the Permian period, the last period of the Paleozoic era, and it was so catastrophic that it had all the chances of becoming the last mass extinction on our planet. Scientists are still unsure what caused so many species to be eliminated. But the fact is that around 96% of all living creatures in the world were gone. One theory suggests that volcanoes started being overly active. They threw millions of tons of methane and basalt into the atmosphere. Asteroid strikes might have added to the damage too. The sky was literally covered in dark clouds of ash. The proto-mammals and reptiles tried to hide from the black and gray mist, but it was everywhere. It was like hiding from the air itself. Another culprit could have been microbes that loved their methane-rich environments. They could have quickly spread in the oceans and literally choked the rest of the marine life forms there. But whatever the reason, the Permian mass extinction event was the most massive and destructive of all the Great Five. All life on our planet could have ended right then and there. But those 4% that persisted eventually spread across the Earth and started a new era. Yay! This time, they lived a peaceful life for only 50 million years. And then, whammo, the fourth great mass extinction hit. It was different though, slowly creeping across the planet over the last 18 million years of the Triassic period. The extinction occurred in numerous short pulses, wiping out several species at a time. A slight climate change here, an abrupt temperature fall there, and very upset animals and fish all around. The main reason for that was again the volcanic activity at the time. Fiery mountains started spewing out ash and gas once more, lowering the oxygen levels and suffocating life. Well, that was harsh. The gases and other substances thrown out of the volcanoes' mouths changed the Earth's climate again. Sea levels rose because of that, and some researchers believe even the pH levels were altered. That means the marine life that used to be swimming peacefully in more alkaline waters suddenly found itself trying to survive in acid. But apart from causing bursts of extinction, these changes also ushered in the era of dinosaurs. It didn't begin immediately, of course. Some species evolved and slowly grew into the mighty animals we've heard so much about. Their extinction was the last of the Great Five, and certainly the most well-known. About 65 million years ago, when dinos were still ruling both land and ocean, an enormous asteroid came from outer space and fell right on Earth. The impact was so powerful, it left a huge crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, and the explosion sent billions of tons of debris into the air. The dinosaurs that lived far away from the impact zone raised their heads and saw black and churning clouds blocking the sun. It remained for years, drastically dropping the temperatures. In addition to the cold that followed, the asteroid hit a carbonate rock that had a lot of flammable material in it. The impact led to an explosion. The chemicals mixed in the air and produced sulfuric acid, and that acid fell down in the form of rains, altering the pH of the oceans. Aquatic creatures that were again used to more alkaline waters went, "Oh, come on!" That didn't help, though. The changes were abrupt and severe. About 75% of all animals and plants went extinct in a matter of years, unable to survive the new, harsh conditions on the planet. But some persisted. Many of them were reptiles, like crocodiles and turtles, which managed to survive even up to this day, looking almost the same as they did back in the dinosaurs' days. Others were mammals, which had lived in the shadow of the mighty dinos and hid from them in dark corners. But now that the giant animals were gone, they began to flourish, bringing in the Cenozoic era, the one that lasts to this day. And today, we might be witnessing the sixth great mass extinction. According to scientists, with the evolution of humans, a lot of different plants and animals have gone from the face of our planet, never to return. The good thing is, mass extinctions have always happened over a span of several million years, so we might still have time to recognize it, prepare, and counteract. What do you think? Shall we?
You decided to go scuba diving for the first time. The water is clear and the sun is shining on the seabed. You take a few selfies and the fish swimming by when suddenly, the ocean goes pitch black. You look up and, oh my, what is that gigantic animal? It's definitely not a shark, not a whale. Is it a turtle? Yup, but fear not, it's not gonna hurt you. If you had lived on this same Earth about 72 million years ago, then maybe this could have really happened to you. Scientists have recently found the fossils of a gigantic marine turtle that could have grown as big as 12 feet. If you don't have any idea of how big that is, let's see some examples. That's the average length of a hippopotamus, 6 golden retrievers, or 2 Michael Jordans stacked on top of each other. The turtle's scientific name is an homage to that old-school sea monster called Leviathan. Maybe you remember this from old-school history lessons. The Leviathan is supposedly a mythical creature that would swallow entire ships or people that were deemed too greedy by the creature. Can you imagine being swallowed by this humongous sea turtle? No, thank you. The fossils of this gigantic creature began to be excavated between 2016 and 2021, all the way in northeastern Spain. The first fossil was located by a hiker in the Spanish Pyrenees, and it was around 8 inches long. The pelvis of this turtle alone measured around 35 inches. It would definitely be one of the biggest turtles today if it hadn't gone extinct. FYI, the largest living sea turtles today can reach up to 6 feet in length, which is already pretty big. Now, how about a gigantic prehistoric scorpion? I bet most people here are not huge fans of these creatures, especially since they're poisonous, which is why the thought of a 9-foot-long aquatic scorpion might be the stuff of nightmares. Let's just say that if they hadn't gone extinct some 400 million years ago, lakes and rivers would be much more dangerous places for humans today. These gigantic insects were considered to be apex predators in their time, hunting everything from fish to other animals, even of their own kind. Yikes! I got goosebumps just imagining these creatures. Should we thank the asteroid that hit our planet now or later on in this video? Another prehistoric animal that would shock humans if it were still alive is the so-called Megatherium, a gigantic sloth. This huge sloth is believed to have grown up to 20 feet long, and its weight could be up to 8,000 pounds. It was found in the woodlands and grasslands of South America. The creature used to stand on its 2 feet in order to reach leaves on high branches. These giant sloths had huge claws. They helped them climb trees. I gotta say, I feel uncomfortable imagining these elephant-sized sloths climbing trees. Oh, of course, some dinosaurs will make our super-sized creatures list. But before that, here's a fun fact. Did you know some dinosaurs are still alive today? Scientists have proven that birds are classified as theropod dinosaurs. Such infamous creatures as the T-Rex and Velociraptor belonged to this group. I'm sure you've heard these names even before you watched Jurassic Park. The Velociraptor is that scary dino that breaks into the kitchen. Well, they evolved, gained some feathers, and turned into various species of birds we know today. That means that any bird from chickens to those little blue ones is a direct descendant of dinosaurs. Now, does the name Spinosaurus ring a bell? You can see this huge dinosaur in some museums today. Its fossils, I mean. The Spinosaurus was one of the biggest land predators to walk Earth. Actually, to walk its land and water, since scientists believe that this dino was semi-aquatic. It fed mostly on meat, which means humans would be its natural prey if it lived today. This meat-eating dino lived around 90 to 100 million years ago. It was about 60 feet long, 12 feet high, and weighed up to 22 tons. Its head was around the size of 8 bowling balls and was shaped like a crocodile's face. Basically, the Spinosaurus was a big African elephant with the face of a crocodile. Just kidding. But that would look funny though, wouldn't it? A much more attractive dino was this guy. It's considered to be the largest dinosaur that has ever lived on our planet. What made it so big was its extremely long neck and very long tail. You wouldn't want to stand behind this creature, believe me. If it decided to swish its tail, you'd get catapulted very far away. This creature lived around 100 million years ago, and its fossils were first found in Argentina around 2012. The dino measured 120 feet from head to tail, which made it almost as big as an American football field in width. And have I mentioned it weighed almost as much as a space shuttle? A staggering 75 tons. If it had been a carnivore, it would have probably been the greatest predator. But this big guy was a peaceful herbivore that had such a long neck that it could eat leaves from high trees. Cute, right? We must also talk about the Shastasaurus. As the name suggests, this animal is popularly known as the Mount Shasta lizard. Even though it was a marine reptile and probably never set foot on the mountain itself, this dino was usually around 23 feet long, but there was a specific strand of this species that could get as big as 69 feet long, about the size of the great blue whale. This made it the biggest marine reptile to have ever lived. A fun fact about the Shastasaurus is that scientists believe it didn't even have teeth, which means it could only feed on soft-bodied prey, such as squid, for example. The next animal on our list is the blue whale. Believe it or not, the biggest living animal on Earth actually started small. These days, the average mature blue whale can reach up to 100 feet in length and weigh up to 200 tons. That's more or less the weight of 40 elephants put together, or 30 Tyrannosaurus rexes, or 2,670 average-sized people. Blue whales have to eat up to 50 million calories per day to support that body. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Big Macs, just FYI. But blue whales weren't always this big. They actually evolved from a four-legged mammal that lived on Earth around 48 million years ago. Their ancestor was called Pakicetus, and it was only 6 feet long. Here's a fun fact. To be able to live in the water as one does today, the blue whale had to go through some intense adaptations. A blue whale can replace up to 80 to 90% of oxygen in its lungs each time it takes a breath. A human replaces only up to 15% for comparison. It allows these animals to dive for up to 1 hour at a time, down to a staggering depth of 330 feet. Elephants were bound to make the list. Elephants are currently the largest land animals on Earth. They can grow to be about 13 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons. That's pretty small if we compare it to the other animals that once lived on Earth, right? But if we placed a 6-foot-tall human next to an elephant, we'll see it's not at all that small. African elephants are bigger than their close relatives, Asian elephants, and they have a similar lifespan to humans, up to 70 years. Pokemon might have made us collectively wish that salamanders were real-life dragons, although they're not. They can still be pretty cool though. There's a giant species of salamander that is known to be the largest living amphibian. They can grow to be as long as a regular-sized human, reaching up to 6 feet. I bet that wouldn't be a pleasant underwater encounter. The giant shark that terrorized the oceans some 20 million years ago. For 13 million years, this 60-ton beast dominated the warm waters of our planet. Though, some believe that the Meg still lives in the most remote and deepest parts of the ocean. It's a hot summer day. It seems only logical to go for a swim in the sea. You're floating on your back, completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. Water's pleasantly cool around your body. A light breeze touches your face. You feel calm enough to doze off. Suddenly, something bumps into your leg. Yanked out of your half-slumber, you begin to flail until you're face to face with the invisible danger. Luckily, all you spot is a couple of easily recognizable fins and cute smiley snouts. Phew, just dolphins. Guess you're lucky to meet them in the wild. These amazing creatures are so close, you can touch them. You've heard people say dolphins' skin feels rubbery, but to your mind, it's more like the inner part of a hard-boiled egg. One of the animals is so close to you that its salty smell fills your nostrils. You know, though, that dolphins don't have sweat glands. It means they don't sweat and are pretty much odorless. The smell you sense comes from the water they swim in. The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark dominated the seas for centuries before coming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. A megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The Megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, those teeth landed in the seabed where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the Megalodon's existence. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that unlike other marine animals of its time, the Megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The Megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the megalodon was the arch-enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now.
whether the meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever. Younger cousins will still be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight towards their prey and find its softest spot, like exposed legs or underbelly. Sometimes, an entire tooth would be found embedded in a bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks. The good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe with their thick shells. The Meg probably took them as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the Megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, for example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The Megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a Megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. Some people believe that the Megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean's waters. But it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the Megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the Megalodon to eat at deep sea level. Simply put, if there was an animal as big as the Megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It is unlikely that you'll run into a Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news if you do run into one is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the Megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, the shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. The fearsome name Megalodon comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that over time, deep sea levels dropped and the ocean's temperature went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled and the number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't exactly help the whole extinction thing. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The Megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon